Alright, this video just makes sense after the previous ranking Wes Anderson video, and someone asked me to rank these shorts in the comments, so I just have to do it. Let's rank the Roald Dahl Wes Anderson Netflix shorts almost 3 months too late.
You've got to be clever on a rat, and that is saying something.
The Ratcatcher follows Rupert Friend and Richard Ayoade as they hire a rat exterminator to get rid of their rodent problem, but Ralph finds his Ratcatcher has some unusual ways to take care of the problem. This is by far the worst one, I feel, but as I said in the last video, all of Anderson's works are wonderful. I'd rather watch this 1,000 times more than like Five Nights at Freddy's, but it just didn't really click with me like the others. The aesthetic of the series is very much obviously constructed and abstract. Stagehands are on screen giving actors props or moving sets, actors are putting on voices to play different characters, and props are often insinuated and not actually there. More akin to theatre than film, and honestly, I love it. Probably the closest thing that we'll get to a staged play from Anderson. One thing I liked was the climax of the Ratcatcher. That sentence feels way too weird to say out loud, now that I think about it. The climax of the short was the most interesting part. It crescendos as the Ratcatcher seemingly devours a rat and the filmmaking becomes abstract and avant-garde. Exaggerated lighting and Dutch angles are used in close-up shots of our characters and shock. Anderson almost taking on a German expressionist style, with the Ratcatcher very obviously being a homage to Nosferatu. This style was interesting to me, but ultimately didn't serve the plot strongly, and I admire the strong hit and miss rather than a weak shot, if you catch my drift. The monotonous dialogue kind of just feels like we're going in circles and it's just boring, which is disappointing because I think the Ratcatcher is the most stunning character design. The look of the character sticks in my head more than the film itself. Ralph Fiennes plays this role so well too, he's almost unrecognizable in the role and plays it with such conviction. I think what puts this down at the bottom of the list is that I feel that there isn't a strong theme that the short is based around, or at least I've been able to figure out. The other shorts feel like they have meaningful things to say about society, and the Ratcatcher sort of lacks in that department, and I think that's why Anderson sort of upped the style aspects of this short, being a sort of stylistic exercise more than anything.
50,000 pounds a night for 365 days a year. That's 18.25 million pounds.
The Wonderful Story of Henry Sugar is the longest short of the four, and funnily enough, I think it's the most forgettable. It follows Henry Sugar, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who comes across the teachings of a guru, played by Ben Kingsley, who can see without his eyes. Sugar then learns this talent and uses it to cheat at gambling. The narrative is quite confusing, but that isn't surprising for a Wes Anderson movie. He loves his stories within stories, and this one takes it to the extreme. First of all, Roald Dahl is telling the story about Henry Sugar, who reads the story of a doctor who then recounts a story from the guru about how he learned his talent. So it's a story within a story within a story within a story. Although this is quite dense, Anderson does a well enough job of flying through it to not really let you linger on this. As it is the longest short film out of the lot, it has a more complicated production design. Where the other shorts might have 1 or 2 locations, Henry Sugar takes us on a journey through multiple countries, locations, and individual set pieces, and as I described before, how these sets transition between each other is a work of art in and of itself. This doesn't mean it's seamless, it's purposeful that Anderson is showing the seams. Stagehands are running around and handing out props, pulley mechanisms can be seen, and even obvious visual effects, like a badly cropped rear projector shot or a mirror box used to make a character quote-unquote float. It's very charming in this regard and reminds me of local slapdash school plays. It has that nostalgic feeling which reflects that of Roald Dahl's stories that we all read growing up. The acting was very hit and miss for me. Dev Patel and Richard Ayoade blew me away, but I'm sure I'll sing their praises in the second half of this video. But my main problem is Benedict Cumberbatch. I don't mind him as an actor, but I think he rarely ever transcends a role into something great. There's an unauthentic feeling I get when he acts that I just can't really get behind, and it's in full force here. I'm not trying to make this a Cumberbatch hate video, because he pulls off a way better performance in another short I'll touch on later, but making him the centerpiece of this short brings it down to number 3. The Swan is Wes Anderson's most emotionally resonant film he has ever created. The Swan follows Peter Watson, played by Rupert Friend, as he recounts his torture by 2 bullies when he was young. This short is particularly stripped back compared to the others. There are only ever 2 characters on screen, and it's Peter Watson as an adult recounting his trauma that 2 bullies forced him through, and Peter Watson's younger self serving as a background character, barely ever speaking. The bully kids are never shown, only brought to life through Rupert Friend's spectacular vocal work and change of posture. Another thing that is far more common in theatre. A particularly powerful moment is when Watson is tied down to a train track by the two bullies, and he describes how the train felt as it went over him. This effect is done so well with the loud whistling of the train, the wind effects, and Friend's acting. This moment feels even bigger with the contrast of the previous 5 minutes that was so stripped back stylistically. Suddenly there's a barrage of sound and visuals that reflect the horrified emotions boiling up in Watson. Similarly, the set design reflects how Watson is trapped in this situation. From this wheat-filled corridor to the train tracks, having a frame within a frame with our main character firmly planted in the middle of it shows us how claustrophobic Watson really feels. The high point of Friend's acting and the short itself happens as the bullies taunt Watson, but suddenly turn and want to shoot a Swan. This seems to be Watson's breaking point, as if to say he can handle his own torture, but a senseless killing of a defenseless animal is too far. The emotion in Friend's voice here is genuinely heartbreaking.
Please don't do it. You can't do it. Please don't do it. Stop!
And what makes this Anderson's most emotional work is the frankness of it. The bully's cruelty is never ending and ever escalating as Watson's life is continuously put in more and more danger. The pace is just relentlessly uniform, making Watson go through these cruel trials, all the while you dread what the outcome will be. The bullies force Watson to put on the dead Swan's amputated wings and try to make him fly, obviously to no avail. The ending of Watson's twisted body on the ground is a tragic frame, and the final twist of the knife is the text on the screen saying it was based on true events. This is by far Anderson's most emotional work to date. In most of these films there's an artifice that holds the audience at arm's length, but for whatever reason this film lets its audience in and shows them a senseless cruelty that is so human.
What is it, Harry?
Great.
What?
Great.
Great?
Snake.
Poison is easily the best short from the batch in my opinion. It has the tightest story, best acting, and a beautiful twist that genuinely surprised me on first watch. Poison is set in an English-occupied India where an army man named Timberwoods, played by Adelaide's own Dev Patel, finds his friend Harry Pope, played by Eggs Benedict Cabbage Patch, lying in a bed frozen. Pope explains a poisonous snake is sleeping on his stomach and quickly gets a hold of Dr. Ganderby, and together they try to sedate the sleeping snake. So many S's. It's a charming premise that lends itself to be very tension heavy but also lighthearted at times. Them slowly trying to sedate the snake is some of the most tense filmmaking I've seen all year. But the comedy works too. Pope trying to wordlessly explain the danger he's in to a clueless Woods is some great physical comedy. And what makes these two tones gel so well together is the acting. Dev Patel is immediately likable in this. He portrays the character as somewhat aloof and naive. His head turns and small reactions is what makes his performance stand out. He feels right at home as a character in Wes Anderson's world. But simultaneously, a darker undercurrent can be found with the metaphors and similes Wood says.
The way he was speaking reminded me of George Barling after he got shot in the stomach when he stood leaning against a crate containing a spare aeroplane engine.
Who's been bitten?
The question came so sharply it was like a small explosion in my ear. The sickening smell of chloroform spread out over the room, bringing with it faint, unpleasant memories of nurses and surgeons.
It gives a more sinister undertone that is almost undetectable if you're not looking for it, but subtly foreshadows the twist in the story. Benedict Cumberbatch is also really good here. He manages to act so much with the smallest eye twitches. It's amazing that so much hatred can be felt between Pope and Ganderby when Cumberbatch has so little movement to work with. Rounding out the trio is Ben Kingsley, and he has a very important part to play in this short. After Dr. Ganderby has sedated the snake, Pope is sick of waiting and jumps up flailing around trying not to get bit by the snake. After a beat, the characters and the audience realize that there wasn't a snake there at all, and Ben Kingsley says the line,
"Maybe you were dreaming, Mr. Pope."
Kingsley says it in such a nonchalant way, like he's trying to break the tension. The perfect line delivery. Pope then launches into a racist rant, thinking Dr. Ganderby didn't believe him, that a snake was actually there. This moment hits like a ton of bricks because throughout we don't really understand why Pope has so much animosity towards Ganderby. But this moment recontextualizes everything. The moment between Ganderby and Woods outside, where Woods tries to defend Pope, is met with a knowing silence. Ganderby seems saddened, but no doubt used to this behavior. It truly is such a devastating ending to, quite frankly, a very lighthearted film up until this point. Real poison was racism all along, which sounds cheesy saying it out loud, but it's very effective and very engaging. And that's why it's my favorite Wes Anderson short of the bunch. A great premise executed well with a solid twist, which is devastating. So here's my ranking here, just all together. And yeah, if you disagree, comment. If you agree, comment. If you have a movie that you want me to cover, just comment it below. Like, subscribe, do all that sort of stuff, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.